All right. Welcome in. All right. Oh, a little echo there. Morning, guys. Morning, everybody. Jan, welcome in. Javier, welcome in. Xavier, James, Venus, Mac. Welcome in, everybody. Top of the morning. Happy gap up in the market. Wow. Massive gap up in the market. We're going to talk a lot about this today. Obviously, this is the center point of today's stream is going to be talking about this gap up. What's going on? Why are we gapping up, first of all? What is causing this gap up, right? And we're also going to talk about the levels today, right? We're going to go over everything on the level side to discuss what's going on, like what sort of pullback longs do we have, right? So that is what is going on. Today's discussion is going to be on what happened over this weekend, right? The negotiations that occurred over this weekend that's resulting in upside. We're going to talk about where the levels are, right? The 576 on SPY, the 570 on SPY, the 585 demand resistance on SPY. We're going to talk about the ES chart. We'll talk about what's going on here in the ES. We're going to discuss the massive technical supply we've gapped up into, right? We've made a very massive upside move, but the question becomes, where do things begin to slow down, right? And I think the answer to that question is where we are right now, right? We have opened up into a very critical level, and we're going to talk about this critical level on the ES chart. In particular, the ES chart, because on the SPY chart, it's a little bit hard to see, but on the ES chart, you can see what I'm talking about. So we're gonna discuss this today. We're going to talk about Amazon. We'll talk about Amazon level 210, 200 level. We'll talk about Tesla, the massive gap up. We'll talk about 308 demand and 300 demand, a very big level here on Tesla's chart. We're going to go over NVDA. We'll talk about NVIDIA gapping up. This is an excitement day for me because I love NVIDIA, and I love the fact that NVIDIA is gapping up. We'll talk about 120 in NVIDIA. We'll talk about 117 in NVIDIA. Very big levels here we can talk about going into our session ahead of us. We're also going to go over Meta. Meta, a really important daily level where we're tapping 635. This is a new level that I added to my chart. You can see exactly where it's coming from, 635. We'll talk about that today. We'll go over Apple. We'll talk about Apple 207 and 213. And we're going to go over other names as well that you guys are watching. So that is what we are doing in this stream this morning. Brett, back to your NVIDIA equity average. My NVIDIA equity average is about 104, 103, 104. So I'm very much so officially in the green now on NVIDIA. I mean, I've been green for a little bit, but I'm now very green on NVIDIA. But I'm not selling NVIDIA till maybe 160, right? So that's just my opinion. People think I'm crazy, but it's not crazy. It really isn't crazy at all. If you think I'm crazy, I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, welcome everybody. Hope everyone's having a nice Monday morning. Hope everyone had a nice weekend. If you are a mother, happy Mother's Day. And I want to now dive into our charts. So we have how many people? We have 883 people, 900 people now in the stream, and we have 179 likes. Let's get the like count up, guys, and let's dive into our charts. So today's session on the earnings docket. I want to talk about this first because it's not so important. On the earnings docket this morning, we have Monday.com. It's always funny because Monday.com always reports on Monday. That can't just be a coincidence. They definitely planned that. Besides that, Tuesday, you can see JD, Honda. Wednesday session, you have Cisco, you have Sony. And then Thursday, that's where things become big. You have Alibaba, right? Baba, you have Walmart, WMT, you have Kava, you have AMAT, and that's all we have on the earnings docket. Nothing incredibly important about the earnings docket going into our session week, right? Nothing crazy. Thursday session being the biggest, but besides that, it's not an incredibly important session in terms of earnings reports. On the economic data side, you can see things really begin to pick up. Things pick up because we have on Tuesday session the consumer price index at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This, for people who don't know, which you guys I'm sure know this already, the consumer price index is inflation, right? So the inflation report comes out on Tuesday. Then Wednesday session we have Fed speakers who probably are going to discuss the inflationary results. Then on Thursday session, we have more inflation data, but not inflation data with the eyes of the consumer, but instead with the eyes of the producer, the PPI final demand. So keep that in mind. We have PPI inflation data on Tuesday, inflation data on Thursday, and then Jerome Powell speaking at 8:40 a.m. on that Thursday morning. Now, it's interesting to see here because Powell's discussion, right, is going to talk a lot about tariff, right? Because over this weekend, the market is gapping up on this Monday morning because US and China agreed to a temporary slash in tariffs over negotiations in Geneva, right? So in Switzerland, they discussed tariffs, and they both agreed to cut the reciprocal tariffs by 115% for 90 days. Now, one of the key points Jerome Powell made during his FOMC last week was the fact that even though inflation is looking good, right? Inflation is coming down, and job reports are still strong, but they're not overly overheated. His biggest concern was actually the result of tariffs on the CPI, right? On PPI and CPI, right? And so now, going into our week ahead of us, it's going to be interesting to see not only what the data is going to read, right? The CPI data is going to read, because the CPI data is now going to start to show some things that inflation was indicating, but it's also going to be important to see what he says about the negotiations with China and how tariffs seem to be sort of not fully closed out, but beginning a trade deal, right? And that's going to be really important because we may get some positive sentiment going into our Thursday session. Okay, so let's dive into charts now. I want to talk about it. We have, how many people we have here? We have over 1,100 people here. Let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. So on the SPY chart, here on the SPY chart, we've just gapped up, right? That's what's going on here. So a major gap up over our 570 supply. We spoke about this for a while. We spoke about the consolidation between that ES 5600 and the 570 here in SPY. We were consolidated for a while, and on Friday's session, pre-market, we discussed the idea of there being a big move into the weekend. Do you guys remember that? We said, hey, be careful swinging into this weekend because there is some trade deal potential going on, right? I didn't know, truthfully, if we were going to gap up or gap down. I don't think anyone knew that, right? But what did happen is we gapped up, right? So we've gapped up in the market after positive news. And so we've now gapped up into supply, right? And that's the key thing I want to note about today's session, right? We've gapped up into a major 585 supply, which is a very critical daily level. And more importantly, I want to take a step away from SPY for a second. And I actually want to go to ES chart. We'll go back to SPY in a second, bear with me. But on the ES chart, you can see exactly what I'm talking about with a much more clear picture here, right? You can see we have a very clear level of supply here between 58.50 and 58.60. This whole zone over here, this whole red band over here, where you have multiple inflection points, right, is the area we're sitting at right now in the pre-market session. The question becomes this, right? If you were long down here, you were long down here, you were long down here, and you were buying equity the way you should have been doing. You should have been buying equity. You should have been buying Amazon, NVDA, Tesla, Apple. You should have been buying the whole lot, okay? And you see us moving up higher in the pre-market session this morning, gapping up. Your immediate response system should not be, hey, let's buy more. Let's buy more today, right? Hey, let's buy a lot of long calls into our supply zone that we have here on the ES chart. This is the exact opposite mindset you should have today, right? What you should be looking for today's session is you should say this, well, you know what? You should be appreciative of the gap up, or you should be very appreciative and open-minded to the gap up, right? You're not a complete bear, but you also understand that if you are longing this market, you are longing into a pullback. You're not longing back into this major supply. Now, granted, if we get above the supply zone, which on the ES chart is above 58.60, then sure, right? Sure, we do have some upside trending moves, and we can probably move higher back into 6,000 ES, 6,000 ES, 6,000 ES, and then even 6,200 ES, which is our all-time highs. We are not that far from all-time highs anymore, guys. Look how we are 6%. We are 6 points away from our all-time highs, right? So your mindset now should be, hey, you know what? Let's do this. Let's look for long side trades above 58.60, because if that happens, then long side back into highs, back into 6,000 ES, back into 6,200 ES. Or you could look for this today. You could look for this. You can say, you know what? I want to be patient. I agree with Brett. We should not long in the supply. We should look for pullbacks through demand here, maybe 57.70, maybe 5700 ES, and that's our long spot today. Now, carrying this over to SPY chart, right? Because on the SPY chart, you look at SPY and you're like, well, you know what? hold on a second, right? On the SPY chart, you can see that there is supply ahead of us too, right? So you can see there is supply here at this 585, right? 585, and I'll draw a zone around it too so you guys can see it properly. There is a zone here, right? There's a zone between that 584 and 585. It's a very clear inflection point here on the SPY chart. But it's not as clean as ES's chart, right? And that's why I go over ES and SPY, because sometimes you see things on the SPY chart that you don't see in the ES chart and vice versa, right? Here on the SPY chart, you can see that the supply really is 585. And that's technically $4 away from us. But on the ES chart, hold on a second, we are there right now. So it's an interesting discrepancy between SPY and ES today, because obviously they should be telling us the same thing, but they're not. Because here in the SPY chart, you can see that we do have a little bit of room until that 585 level, right? We have about $4 or $3 of upside until that 585 supply, right? So keep that in mind today, right? On the SPY chart, even if we do grind a little bit higher today, we do have some major overhead supply here on the daily time frame here at 585. I'm not saying short the whole move today. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying this. I'm saying you don't want to be long into this 585. You want to be long on a 576 pullback. And that's a really important level today. The reason why this is a really important level today is because I want to zoom in right over here for a second. And I want you to see here in the daily time frame, we're trending down lower. We produced a lower high here at 576 on the day of March 25, 2025. Tuesday, March 25th, we produced a high here, a lower high here. This lower high right now is what is really putting us into an uptrend, right? So if you are trading this market today looking for pullback longs, your pullback long is staring at you in the face with a big orange sweater, right? It's right here. It's wearing all neon yellow. It's staring at you right now. It's 576, right? This is your level. It's a colossal level. What we're gonna do today, my main watch today is going to say this. You know what? Let's look for the gap up, which has already come in. Let's look for that pullback long into 576, right? For that long opportunity, right? This is your long opportunity today at 576. If you can hold that, that's what I'm watching today. Now, besides that, if we do pull back beyond 576, which is still a possibility, okay? If we lose 576, we move back into 570. That would be a big fill between 576 and 570. Even if we lose 576, we're still bullish. 570 is still the level. We can still long side trade 570 as well. So if you're trading the market today, you're watching for this. And I'll go to the 15-minute time frame so we can really make this concrete. You're watching for a pullback to 576 for longs, a pullback to 570 for longs. If we lose 570, we no longer are bullish, and you can short anything at that point for a downside move, right? So that's my mindset, really, is this. Look for a gap, look for a pullback today after a major gap up, demand here, demand there. That's it. That's what today is all about. Now, if we keep grinding higher and zombie grinding higher today at 585, it's possible we can look for the reversion plays here, right? Seriously, it is, right? It's possible we can look for reversion plays here off of a failure of 585 and a downside play. That's a possibility as well. If you see us break and retest, that's a trigger for upside. But again, I think the most likely scenario is reversion here off the 585. We've already gapped up a lot into this news. So I think reversion plays here at 585 top watch, and then secondary long there. And then obviously a third long here at the 570. So that's what today is all about today in the SPY. Okay, so this is what it is in the SPY chart. Now, correlating this over now to the Qs. So back to the QQQ chart. Let's go over Qs now. On the QQQ chart, daily time frame, you can see kind of the same picture here, right? We have a supply, and I'll draw the supply out so we have it properly. You can see supply between this 510 level, 510 supply here on the QQQ chart, and that's pretty damn close to where we're opening up right now in the pre-market session, right? You can see we've broken out a downtrend, we've ripped higher, we've sort of formed this uptrend. We are obviously uptrending, right? But we've uptrended as far as a supply here, and we're opening up right into supply. The question becomes, what do we do with the supply? Well, my first reaction here is let's look to see if we can get some reversion plays off supply. If we can get some reversion plays off of supply here at 510, right, that could be a solid play. Look for puts there. If we do push into it and fail, that's a good put opportunity. If we break and hold above 510, then obviously that's wrong, and we're going to rip higher into 520. So how we trade today is going to be based on how we respond to 510. If we are grinding higher into 510 today, short-term puts off of it. If we obviously are breaking above the 510 level, that's your long trigger and an upside trade back into 520. I know it's far-fetched because this is already about $4 away, $3 away, but that's what I watched today here on the QQQ chart. Secondary thing to watch for in the Qs is going to be simply a 500 pullback. If we pull back to 500 today, it's a long opportunity, right? Simple as that. 500 pullback long, watching that today. The reason why 500 is a pullback long is because if you go to the 4-hour time frame here on the QQQ, right, you can see there's a level here at 500. You can see 500, 500, 500. That's a pullback long spot number one. Pullback long spot number two is again that March 25th highs. Remember I said this on the SPY, right? It's still bullish if we pull back here. If the market does this today, and we say, oh my God, the market must be going to zero, it's not, because still 494, 493 on the QQQ, big technical demand. This is actually my main long spot on the market today, right? All comes back down to that particular day. Not even the level. I don't care about the number. I care about the day. I guess in that sense, it is still the number, right? But this is the day. The day is March 25th. If we pull back the March 25th highs on SPY, ES, or Qs, that's your long spot, okay? So again, here on the QQQ, watch that 494 as your technical long spot today. If we do grind higher, supply rejections. If we fail back lower after gapping up, look for demand back at these lows, okay? So that is what we're watching today's session. I hope everybody understands it. I'm gonna now take a sip of water and we're gonna dive into our charts. So does everyone understand though? Does this make sense today on the SPY chart? You guys have any questions before I move on? I want to make sure everyone's on the same page here on these charts. So I think it's a yes. So I think we're good. We're gonna move on. So let's move on. First chart of the day is going to be NVDA. So NVDA, always a fun one. Let's talk about NVDA. So NVIDIA's chart. On the NVDA chart, what we're watching today here in NVIDIA is going to be 120, right? It's simple. NVIDIA 120 and NVIDIA 123.50, right? So these are the levels here. NVIDIA held demand on that on Tuesday, right? It held demand on Tuesday about 150. You can see really it's 115, right? 115, and then Friday session 115. So where's that? Thursday and then Friday. So Thursday low 115, Friday low 115, right? Maintain these demands. We formed a little bit of a flag play here. You can see a potential little bit of a bull flag here off this 115 level. You can see 115 maintaining as a flag trade, right? And obviously we broke out. We broke out of the flag, but the flag play broke out during a gap, right? And to me, this is kind of funny because NVIDIA honestly has not been that good to trade intraday, right? It's been better to trade after hours, right? Because if you look at it, if you longed here on Wednesday session, you made a lot of money into Tuesday to Wednesday. You made a lot of, into Wednesday to Thursday, you made a lot of money there, right? The gap up. Then if you traded on Thursday session, you probably made money, but it was slow because it pulled back and then took a long time to find demand and then it rebounded. And that was me on Thursday session. And then Friday session, it stayed strong. It gapped up a little bit, but then failed back lower into 115 and held support here at 115. But didn't really see a whole lot of movement here at 115. About a dollar move here at 115, maybe $2 if you held for a long time. The moves on NVIDIA have not really been so spectacular during the intraday session. It's actually been better moves. I don't want to say easier, but better moves during the after-hour sessions. There's a big gap up and now another big gap up. I would watch here in NVIDIA's chart the same thing as always. I would watch for a pullback long here around these previous highs, right? So if you see NVIDIA pull back to the bull flag highs here, which is around 119.50 to 120, if you see this happen today, that's your long spot, right? That's my main watch today. NVIDIA is going to be a pullback long here, 120, 119.50. And trust me, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I can't promise you it's going to be sexy, right? Because I can tell you this, on Thursday session, I was battling this chart for 3 hours. 3 hours straight, I battled this into demand. Were we right about it? Yes, we were right about it, right? We pulled back to demand here. We held higher and we ripped, right? Even Friday session, we pulled back lower. We held demand and ripped. The demands do work here in NVIDIA. The levels work, but the problem is I can't control the choppiness. So if this does pull back to 119.50, 120, don't just full port it off the get-go, right? Wait for some confirmation, right? Maybe wait for a trend break, a trend flip, then go long. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, right? Go zoom into the intraday, right? When you see that trend begin to flip an upside, that's your long opportunity, right? And even on that Friday session. So again, watch 120, 119.50. Those are the big levels. You can also watch for a movement above these highs over here. But I'll tell you this, you do not want to be long in 123.50. This is where you don't want to be long because you can see some rejections come there. You want to be long either on a pullback to 120, 119.50, or you want to be long above that 123.50 for upside back in the highs. Okay, let's move on, guys. I want to go over the AMD chart. On AMD, wow, we have 1,900 people here this morning. What's going on? That's crazy. That's the most. Is that real? I feel like sometimes I have like bots in here. I don't know. Are you guys real? 1,900 people here. Is that actually saying that? That's crazy. Well, welcome in, guys. Hope everyone knows who I am. Maybe you guys don't even know who I am. Like the video if you can. Probably many of you guys don't even know who I am because there's so many people here. Anyway, so on the AMD chart, on AMD, watch 110. Right, 110 is your big level here at AMD. Like I said with NVIDIA, right? Remember I said NVIDIA 123.50. You don't want to be long into NVIDIA 123.50. The same idea as AMD 110. You don't really want to be long here yet. You want to be long either on some sort of pullback on AMD to 104, 107, or you want to be long on a break and hold above 110. This to me is telling me right now, right? I mean, arguably you can see it here, right? You see that March 24th breakout. It's very unlikely we're going to see that 110 breakout like this, but if you are going to trade this today, right, what you're going to do is you're going to do this. You're going to look for either a pullback to, and I'm going to adjust this level now because you can see that there's very clearly an adjustment that needs to be made here. It's really 105.50, right? Look for this Thursday high here, right? Thursday high, and I'm going to zoom and make this a zone here because you can see that this is just a big consolidation, right? You can see there is a consolidation to watch out for, right? Between that a Tuesday, Wednesday high into that Thursday, Friday high. What I would watch out for on AMD's chart, the main thing I'd focus on is going to be some sort of pullback back into these previous highs, that Thursday high, 105.50. If we can fill that gap down lower, right, look for long side trades back at the gap fill level. That's what I'd watch today here at AMD's chart, 105.50, 105.50. And I was saying something before. I said you don't really want to be long here because, again, 110. And I kind of stopped myself in the tracks there. The reason why I stopped myself in the mid-sentence is because while I was saying that, I looked over here in the 15-minute time frame. And you can see for a second, right? Zoom into what happened right over here. This is actually quite interesting, right? I'm going to zoom in to that March 25th intraday session. And you can see what occurred here in AMD was exactly the scenario we're seeing right now pre-market, right? We saw a little bit of a build right in 110 supply. And you can see here, there was no moment to be long on AMD until it obviously broke above 110 at 10 o'clock on that March 24th. So we did see a pretty aggressive breakout last time we tapped 110, right? We saw a move from 110 all the way to 113 plus topping out at 115. So today's session, we are doing pretty much the same thing pre-market, right? Look at the similarities pre-market to that day to where we're at right now in the pre-market session right now. In the pre-market session right now, we're gapping up right into that 110 level and we look strong, but we're in supply. If you're going to trade AMD today upside, you can only trade it here on a pullback or some sort of long opportunity and a break and hold above 110, in which case you can target 113, you could target 116. So watching that today, that's a main watch. Again, AMD you could see that aggressive breakout today, but it's got to be a move above 110, right? If you do, it's similar price action to that March 24th day, okay? Moving on, guys, I want to talk about the SMH. On the SMH, what I'm watching for in the SMH is going to be a 232 pullback long, right? So remember we said this, if we get about 218, 220, right, really 220, we should see that upside back in 232. Well, what did we see, guys? Right back in 232. Now, today's session, if you're trading here in the SMH or trading chips in general, right, your main focus should be, hey, if the SMH is above this 232 level, you are bullish, you're looking for upside. Look for the pullback long here, 232. That's my main focus today here in the SMH. Obviously, I'm not an SMH trader. I'm more of a chip trader, like NVIDIA, AMD, Avgo, right? You can trade those smaller names, but you still want to be keeping an eye here in the SMH because if the SMH loses 232, then obviously you don't want to go long the stock. But if we do hold 232, then upside is most likely the case, okay? So that is what I'd watch out for here on the SMH. Obviously, long side trades valid as long as we're above 232. That's all we have here. Okay, let's move on, guys. Let's go over Tesla first. Tesla. So here on the Tesla chart, Tesla 308, right? So there's a few different levels here to watch on Tesla. The main thing I want to talk about on Tesla is the fact that we don't really have a lot of levels between 310 and 366. The reason why I say that is because you can see that almost every time we get above this 310 level, you can see pretty clear and concise moves back in the 360s, and then again, back down lower, back down higher, right? You can see it just is a very clean move between 310 and 366, right? That seems to be a very clear channel here, right? And so what I'm saying right now on Tesla is if we are above this 310 level, right, which in this case is really 307, I would say 307 low, right, 307 low, 307 low, 307 high, then we should see in a larger term idea here is we should see this move back in 366. So what does that mean? Well, it means this. Well, it means that if today's session, you're going to look for longs back at 307, 308. If you can look for a long side trade there, that's your top watch, right? 308, 308, 308, right? Again, I'm not saying we see 366 in one day, but I am saying that typically we do see some aggressive moves between 308, 310 to 366. So we should, in theory, move higher back into that 366 level. If it does fail below 307, if we do lose 307, 308, then this is going to move back down to our channel highs here, which is 290, 295, which again is another long opportunity. You can look for longs off that opportunity as well, right? So again, demand zone 1, demand zone 2. I would say the best long spot today, though, on Tesla is going to be back at this level here, though, at 307, 308, right? If you can see a pullback to our Friday's highs, that could be, it's probably your top watch today in Tesla for a long opportunity, right? I'm still saying this though, if we lose this 308 level, you could in the short term look for puts back down lower, right? But again, only as low as this 295, 290 area, because again, that's a big demand as well. You can see demand, 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 right? So if you're going to short Tesla, in my opinion, you're either going to look for some sort of sweaty reversion trade here, which I don't love it because there's no level here. There's just simply no level here. So I don't even like that. The only short is going to be under 307, 308, in which case you could look for a move lower back into 295. But again, don't be a weirdo holding puts into 295 because you can see here, there is a lot of pent up demand here, right? There is an argument that eventually at some point, this chart has to test 295, right? And in that sense, right, does that mean we can't take 307 demand bounce? No, we still can take 307, 308, right? 307, 308 is still a level, right? It's still our Friday's highs. You can still look for longs here, right? But the main long spot is still going to be actually this 295 to 290 area. The reason why I say that is because it's technically an untested level of demand, right? So keep an eye on that level. Again, keep an eye on both these levels for long spots today here on the Tesla chart, okay? I know sometimes I talk about two different levels of demand, and looking for pullback longs into two different levels. I know for some people that's confusing, but you have to understand it's probably going to be both, right? It probably simply will be both, right? Probably you'll see some reaction on 308 and you also see reaction on 295. So again, two different levels here on Tesla's chart, but I think both will be a strong area today's session, okay? So let's move on. Let's go over Amazon. So on the Amazon chart, it all comes down to 210 today, right? So 210 is your major level. What I'd watch out for on the Amazon chart is I'd watch to see if we can get above 210, right? If we can get above 210, you should see a move back into 215, right? That's your next sort of little break and retest trade. A break, you can see here, a break, a retest above 210, upside trade in 215, right? But it kind of doing this right now to me, I'll be honest with you, right? Drawing this out right now seems so far fetched. In a major gap up like this, it's hard for me to sit here with not smiling, right? And say, hey, let's look for a break and retest above 210. Because I mean, reasonably, you need to see a pullback in this chart, right? You need to see a pullback in the market in general. What I'd watch for is I'd watch for a pullback into that March 25th high. If you can see a pullback into 206, that's probably your major long spot today. 206 pullback at a bare minimum, I think, would be realistic. And the secondary pullback would be back into 200, right? 200 pullback or 206 pullback. I would much rather pullbacks in these names, right? I don't really want to be taking a break and retest type trade, a breakout trade into a gap up. It's not really something that I love doing, right? So looking at this chart right now, I'll tell you honestly from a level perspective, right? Obviously above 210, there is 215, but is that logical? Is that the right thing to do today? I think the right thing to do today is probably wait for a pullback, right? Wait for a 206 pullback. That's your long spot opportunity. Wait for 200 pullback. That's your long spot opportunity. Those are the big levels to watch out for going into our session today. Fancy, thank you very much, Fancy. You are very kind. Fancy, you are my number one supporter, Fancy. Thank you very much. It's always good to see your name. And Joshua as well. Thank you, Joshua. You guys absolutely don't have to do this. Hopefully it's coming out of maybe some profits from your long-term portfolios, right? I can promise you this, right? I think the one thing I always do right, if I do anything right, is I always scream at you guys to buy when the market's down. And I tell you guys to be patient when the market's up, right? And I think today's session is exactly that, right? You should have been buying when this whole market was pulling back, right? Like this into the 180s, the 160s, the 170s. And right now you should be smiling, right? You should be smiling and you should be just waiting for pullbacks, right? Because if we do pull back, that's what you're looking for longs. Even for your long-term equity, for short-term trades, all the same thing, right? We're not going to be longing back into a major gap up like this, right? This is not what we're doing, right? We are sitting back, we are relaxing, we're taking it easy because our shares are going to be up an incredible amount, right? That's what it is to be a long-term equity buyer, right? That's why we do this, so we don't have to panic when the market's gapping up like this. Oh my God, I didn't build my long-term portfolio, right? And if you didn't build your long-term portfolio, it's not over, right? It's not over. Just wait for dips, wait for pullbacks, and that's what it is, okay? On the Apple chart, on Apple, what I'd watch for on the Apple chart is I would watch to see this one level right here. And this is the one breakout trade I can really get behind. The reason why I say this is because I like this level. You can see that Apple has been a ticker that's been relatively underperforming the market. It's been relatively underperforming the market. And we have obviously a very major trend here on this chart. And you can see we were just starting to break the downtrend. I can really see this going back into all-time. Obviously, this is going to go back to all-time highs eventually, right? Apple eventually will go back to all-time highs. What I'd watch for in Apple moving forward is I'd watch to see if we can get above this 213, 214 level. If we can get above 213, 214, right, we can look for an upside trade back into highs here at 225, right? 213, 214, very major level, very major level, very major level. If we can break that level, then obviously long side trades back at 225. This is a nice breakout trade going into our Monday morning. Somebody asked, why do you chart on the 5 and 15 minute and not the daily? Jay Moan, I actually do chart on the daily and the hourly, right? I chart on the daily, the 4 hour, the hourly, but when I show you guys the levels, I'm showing you guys on the 15 minute because it's easier to see it in the 15 minute, right? But a lot of my levels are all from that daily time frame anyway, right? So let's move on, guys. Let's talk about the next ticker of the day. Let's talk about Meta. So Meta's chart. And we're going to go speed round right now, guys. So if I wasn't talking fast before, then you're going to have to probably put me in 0.5 speed because I'm going to be talking really fast right now. So on the Meta chart, watch this 610 level. 610 level demand, 610 level demand. That's your big level demand. If you're looking for longs today, watch 610. I know it's far away, but that's your big level. 610 as your pullback long. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is understanding this. Understanding that better than waiting long here at 610 is not longing this into supply. You do not want to be long into this major supply zone here at 634, 635. Let the stock do its thing. Either let it break out here above 635, in which case you can look for dip buys back at 635 for an upside trade, or wait for a pullback long here at 610. But I would not be long here into this level here because you can see multiple areas of rejections that I believe is still going to be a level to watch out for going into our session. Okay, so watch this 635, watch 610, right? Microsoft. MSFT, you can see Microsoft level is 447 and then 460. I don't really see much here in Microsoft. I'm not really a big Microsoft trader. I'll tell you this though, we are actually pretty damn close to our all-time highs. All-time highs here about 4% away. It's crazy. We're getting back to all-time highs now. Like that's just, it's insane. I would say that your main watch here at Microsoft though should be this pullback, right? It should be a pullback to our Thursday's highs, that 443 level. 443 is technical demand, right? Watch that for a pullback long. That's all I have here on the Microsoft chart. Okay, PLTR. PLTR, interestingly, not a firework, right? PLTR is not a firework this morning. PLTR is usually a firework, and right now it's absolutely not being a firework. The reason why is because you can see it's a little bit sluggish right now into all-time highs. I think this is still something to keep an eye out, right? You don't want to be long into this 125 level. You can see in the past few days, you've seen some crazy rejections come in here at the 125. The closer we are to 125, the more I don't want to long it, right? The only way I would go long on PLTR is going to be a 104 pullback, which it already did before. 104 is your long area, your long spot. Or it's going to be a break and hold above 125, in which case that's your long trigger. If you see us begin to turn these rejection highs into support, that's your long spot. So right now, absolutely, looking at a gap up like this in PLTR, this gap up to me, this gap up equals meaningless. Why? Because we are simply still under resistance. This gap up is meaningless. In fact, we haven't even broken any technical levels here. So PLTR, be careful longing this today unless it gets above 125, right? So, whoa, it's 9:07, guys. That's it. I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for joining in. We had the most amount of people we've ever had here this morning on this Monday morning. So thank you all for joining in, and I'll see you guys all for live trading. Happy and safe trading. Bye-bye, guys.